Welcome to Sparks of History, where Jewish history and world history meet. We are extremely pleased to have with us today Rabbi Meni Even-Israel, who will be discussing the life and legacy of his father, Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, of blessed memory. And we pray that in the merit of learning some of Rav Steinsaltz's Torah, it will be a merit, a zchut, for the safe and speedily return of the hostages who were brutally taken from their families and homes, and a merit, a zchut, for the safety of our sons and daughters who are serving in the Israeli Defense Forces. May we have a complete victory, nitzachon. By way of introduction, Rabbi Even-Israel was ordained by Israel's chief rabbi, Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu, and he served as a campus rabbi for several years in the United States, including at the University of Maryland and SUNY Stony Brook. Rabbi Even-Israel currently serves as the executive director of the Steinsaltz Center in Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, overseeing Rabbi Adin Even-Israel Steinsaltz's institution worldwide. And he is responsible for the completion of the English and French editions of the Steinsaltz Talmud and the publication of the Steinsaltz Tanakh, among many other endeavors. Rabbi Even-Israel, thank you so much for joining us today from Jerusalem, Yerushalayim.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure with the circumstances not withholding, but it's, as it says, in this kind of time, the only thing we have left is the three things we can do, the three pillars of Judaism, is learn Torah, stand up prayers, which is usually Tehillim in this time of day, and give tzedakah. So we're going to do some learning. We're going to at least talk about doing some learning, which is as important.
Okay, thank you again. Just to start off, how would you describe your father, Rabbi Steinsaltz's childhood? When and how did he become a Baal Tshuva?
Sure. Again, the information I have is information I gathered through the years. He never talked about it, never. I mean, in almost a religious way, he never talked about it. I don't think he was embarrassed in anything. This is not his type to be embarrassed about anything, but he never talked about it. He probably thought it's not necessary for us to know. He grew up in what we called communist, very pro-Zionistic house. My grandfather learned, as far as we know, learned in Overlodge in Ogrodna. I mean, they were kind of from a Hasidic house, but they learned in the Goy Yeshivas, and he became a communist like many other of his friends. In 1926, I think, or 1932, he made Aliyah to Israel with my grandmother, who came, I think, a year before, a year after. And then that was the house that grew. The house was quite secular, but there were certain things that always were kept. I mean, my father celebrated Bar Mitzvah. I mean, it was a different world. I mean, the worlds were colliding, so to speak. There was a relationship, even if you didn't believe, they were not in a sense anti as one can imagine in a modern terms of it. I think my father had a good experience, and he had a great brain to ask the right questions. The most famous stories about him that in a certain point of his life, I had different stories, maybe age 13, maybe 14, maybe 15. My grandfather told him that it's one thing to be an apicorus, an heretic, that we agree with, no problem. But to be ignoramus, to be an am haaretz, that is not acceptable, and therefore here's your Talmud teacher. It seems to be that that's what happened one way or another, but I think my father already had his own interests from a much younger age to take a part with the Jewish world. So he grew up with it, and he grew up again. We're talking about, he was born in 1937, so in the creation of the states, he's 11. I presume that had also a major impact on anybody who lived here in that tremendous and tumultuous time. But mainly, I think that religion, or in a sense Judaism, gave him solace to his ever-inquiring mind. the benefit of learning Talmud specifically was that there's never end. There's no end to learning Talmud. You can always add another level. You can read it, and then you can learn it one time with only Pshat, and one time only with Rashi, and one time only with Tosfot, and then one time to skip one page like this. There's endless amount of information. And as he had, I'm not sure if it was photographic memory, but close enough to it, was very, very helpful. And he trained himself for at least what appeared to be from a very, very young age to concentrate, which is an impressive fit. Most people, if you ask individual to sit down and think on a specific topic for 60 seconds, but not letting anything else come to your mind. I don't care if it's the last football game or it's the last movie you saw or the last page of Mark. I don't differentiate. I'm very, very polite here. But trying to concentrate for a minute, most people can't. And they have to, part of it, to get to there, you have to work a lot to get the practice to do this. My father could have done this for hours. And that is a tremendous tool in understanding the way the system work. And I think that's where his childhood moved from just looking around, but really participating in this inquiry and then his search for higher meaning.
Okay. And education, as he moved on 14, 15, who did he study with? What kind of an education did he receive, both religiously and secularly?
So secularly or semi-secularly, he went at least partially to a high school that was very famous in Jerusalem called Ma'aleh, who was the elite of the elite. Again, that's why I was told the elite students of Jerusalem used to learn there, both religious and non-religious. It was a religious school it was the best school. That's the reason my grandparents sent him there. And I don't think he finished actually all 12 grades. I think he had a year he took off, and then somebody had to beg for him to go back to school, the school to accept him. But he took it. He did a test. He passed the Bagrut on a decent level. Not people think, oh, your father's aced it. No, he didn't care. So I think he got like an average B+. It was not something that he interested in. He told us, one of the stories he told us is that he had his matriculation test, the Bagrut, in, I think, literature. And he made a decision never to open the book. Father read 1,000 books. I'm never going to open the book. And he had to write the essay, the final essay for the school about it. And he never opened the book. He just used the title of the book to deduct what to be the topic. When he got the result, which was pass or something like that, the teacher said, it seems that you vaguely had some context to what the book is about. That was the type of person. In that moment in time, he already had a private Talmud teacher. As far as I know, it was connected to the Gur Hasidim. I'm not sure all details. Again, I've never been told. He had a connection to the local Chabad rabbi in Katamon, Rabbi Eliyahu, who was a scholar of a magnitude. He was close to other rabbis throughout the Jerusalem corridor, and he never had an issue to speak to somebody. So he went to speak and talk and discover. But the challenge, I think, he found very, very early was that he, even from a very young age, didn't have any counterpart. His brain was yonder. He was one level above most people. And in our modern days, he had a hard time relating to people. As a regular, I don't think he understood stupidity. I'm sure he didn't. It was very hard for him to relate to some people who were not as brilliant and smart as he is. But he constantly learned, constantly opened whatever books he could get his hands on. And this was really, really diverse. I'm talking about from math to physics to Talmud, to Mishnah, to Gemara, to Cabala, anything you imagine, he read. Big advocate for reading constantly.
So obviously the translation of the Talmud was a key achievement. Why did Rav Steinsaltz decide to author a translation of the Talmud? What did he see that was missing? Why the Talmud, as you said before? It's there's so much there. It's a sea that's endless. Why not something more, I don't know, basic, simpler, perhaps?
But we did that too in the end. But I think that my father had a line, which was, I think, really defined this kind of work, his work, and specifically why he chose Talmud. The line is like this: the Bible, which is the normal place, or a get-go book, at least we're supposed to at least know it, is God talking to men. That's the instruction. That's the manual. That's where God appeared to appear. God is revealing himself with guidance and light and so on and so forth. And the Talmud is the book when men answer to God. And I think that is what it is. I mean, that to be a Jew is one thing. To understand who we are, understand what we are, Talmud is a book. Talmud is the way we describe things, the way we create things, the way we think about things. I mean, the fact that the Talmud can argue about something that is completely insignificant, really insignificant to anything, on pages and long, is about the mental exercise. The fact that they talk about stories from they have stories about the sages, and you read them, like, no, they didn't say that. That makes absolutely no sense. I mean, some of the description of the world around the Chachamim is scary. I mean, they look in the world in a very black and white. Maybe they're not wrong, but a lot of things that we cannot even fathom saying today, that was their life. Talk about sages that you have the names is renowned, but they hardly had a minyan for Purim, for Megillah. And the tremendous story, tremendous knowledge, tremendous information we have there is what kept the Jews Jews. He had another sentence, which I think was even more deeper, but that came later. And as you deal with history, maybe you can attest to that. He claimed that no Jewish community who did not learn Talmud survived. The Talmud was a key element of the survival of Jewish community, and in a sense, we know it. If the community did not have the koilel, one koilel, 10 guys, no more, 10 guys, that's it, they disappear. I mean, we see it in the Portuguese community in South America. In many places, there were Jewish community, and they disappeared because of the lack of learning. At least that's the way he portrayed it. I think that was his main concern, that the Jews will stop being Jews. That we will obey everything, we'll listen to everything, and we're never going to ask questions. And the Talmud, and really, it doesn't matter what page of Talmud you read, the first question is, why? Why did the scholars, the sages of 6th, 7th, 8th, maybe 9th century, had to make a decision to put this text in? What bothered them? Why you have to keep it? Why the story has to last the test of time? Before you even get to the content, just to understand where they were standing. By definition, I learn more Talmud than anything else I learn. I have to do, family thingy. And really, you read the stories, and that's every page I read. I ask the first question is, why? Paper was expensive. Information was expensive. If there is a text, there must be a reason why it's there. And I think my father saw it as the opportunity to anybody, because really, the Talmud, in a lot of ways, is not a religious book. I know it's almost sacrilegious to say it's not a religious book, but it's almost, you can read Talmud and argue about the notions regardless of what you're feeling about it. And therefore, it's a major common denominator, in a sense, much more than the Bible. I mean, you teach the Chumash to somebody, okay, so you can pass Bereshit somehow without getting to obligations. Once you get to Exodus, to Shemot, you're done. I mean, you have to deal with commandments. Talmud, you can learn it as an intellectual conversation, which my father thought that as a premises to what he did for the rest of his life, I bring you the spoon, I bring you the bowl of soup, in my case, I bring you the knife and the steak, but you have to cut it. You have to put it in your mouth. I'm not going to cut it for you. And that exercise was the thing that guided him the most, is that I'm not planning to make it as simple as possible. I make it as accessible as possible. And from there you want to go. And he 100% believed, without the notion of learning Talmud and comprehending the intrinsic value of it, there's no existence for the Jewish people.
Who was the intended audience for that endeavor? And I'm kind of hesitant at this time to raise anything that smacks of machloket, controversy, but
I agree.
But why did it face some opposition? And without belaboring it.
Okay, we will make it politely. So first of all, the target audience, not till today, but definitely in the good old days when I was young and before actually I was born, was clearly the secular, non-affiliated Jews. Is to give them a key for their own treasure trove. That was the point of it. The point is, I said, this is not ours. People have this concept that because I have a long beard, it's getting wider by the day, that it's mine. No, it's ours. It's part of our treasure. And that was the guideline, because my father felt that because the language is not Hebrew, will alienate more people even accessing it, which is true, and therefore they will never open it, they will never expose to it. So they will get really stuck with the Tanakh, which was very popular in the beginning of the creation of the state. I mean, Ben Gurion was well-versed, and many other members of the Knesset and the government were well-versed in the Bible. We come to the Talmud, not as much. So that was a target audiences, and it really survived most of the time till the 80s, late 80s, 85, 86, and 7, for 20-something years. That was a target audience. I think the main reason people got upset with him, and again, I'll do it as you said, we will do it with the most polite, because this time we cannot find any bad about any Jew. It is repugnant. I think it's at a different mindset. And the difference was on that. Who is the target audience? My father's goal was to bring everybody in. And therefore the language is more than Hebrew, and in English it's more than English, and French is more than French. He will bring historical facts, and sometimes those historical facts will clash with the common understanding of the text, because look, it doesn't happen like that. What can you do? And some people like to keep things more traditional. My father didn't care about the shape of the page. That already was a big no-no for a lot of people. But again, I understand the need. I understand the need of people. Some people have this tendency to close everything, to make sure that they are in their limitation to what they want and keep it only around their community. However, because of the community needs, that our ability to learn was diminished worldwide. We're not talking about Jews or religious or non-religious. Worldwide, we're learning less. The need of other organizations to come up with duplication, copies of the work is more than welcome. My father, a different view of it, but my father's view, we'll give him always the credit, was that they're all his stepsons, all his surrogate children. The fact that there's one audience, another, he never cared. He said the goal is to extend learning Torah. And learning Torah is not about religious or not religious. It's not about it. That's from his perspective. Anybody can learn Torah. Anybody. Because the purpose, that is the premises of the wisdom of God, is the key to bring people together. I can have a conversation with everybody. I might disagree with him politically. I might disagree with him religiously. But I can have an intellectual conversation with him, which is one of the key elements, as I mentioned, for the Jewish people.
Okay. I know in our house we have a number of your father Rav Steinsaltz books that touch the subject of Cabala, which is so popular today in very, very wide circles. Where did Rav Steinsaltz learn Cabala, and why was it important for him to write about Cabala for a general audience?
It's really an excellent question. I don't know the answer. I have no idea where he learned. I presume, the presumption is, Rabbi Eliezer was the key element there. But I presume that once you start learning, what you have really, as he made it very clear, you really have 5-6 books. They all have multitude of volumes that you learn. you have Tanakh, you have Mishnah, you have Gemara, you have Shulchan Aruch or Rambam, and then what? So you have Midrashim, and even in Midrashim, very quickly you realize there's a whole another realm that everybody talks about but nobody explained. Maaseh Bereshit, Maaseh Merkava. And the more intellectual you are, the more you realize that the story, the depiction in both Ezekiel and Isaiah, Chizkiel, Yeshayahu, are not human description. So a person of a magnitude is supposed to ask the question, what is this? What is the description? So I think that's what moved him. He was well versed in the Kabbalistic text. I mean, I'm not talking about only the Zohar, but I'm talking about more bizarre things. The books of Jektilia, the whole list of them, that he was expert on it. And I think that even from a very young age, I mean, when he started his unofficial movement called the Flame of God, Shalahevet Yah, part of the notion was he knew that Hasidus is the key. Well, he called it a modern Hasidus is the key. And the basic concept of Hasidic learning is taking the world around us and not, instead of ignoring it, making it part of what we do. It's to find the holiness in the mundane and find the mundane in the holiness and bring them together to one thing to utilize for God. And I think that, look, we all know. One of my father's expertise, again, I'm sorry, moving a little bit anecdotal here. One of my father's best attributes or best talents was ability to pray. He used to come to the synagogue in the old city, which he was the rabbi of the Chabad shul in the old city. Apropos wars, it's the only shul, at least according to the legend, that was not destroyed in the 67 war. Father was the rabbi there for almost 50 years. And my father used to spend, what happened is, my father used to sit there and try to pray, but anybody who cannot get an appointment with him in the office knew there's no secretary. And so it automatically came to bother him in the synagogue. In the synagogue, one thing he did, so he spoke in the Kriyas Torah came, and he of course listened to Kriyas Torah, and he participated, whatever participated. But then he started davening. Really pray. And that could take 3 to 4 hours. That ability besides the ability to meditate for a long time, that ability comes from understanding if there's hundreds of levels of the Talmud, there's as many levels in prayer. And once you start applying Cabala, Hasidus, to your text, to your learning, to your prayer, it's a whole different, amazing experience. I mean, we learn, I think every kid in Israel who's going to religious school learn the basic kavana of the names of God, right? There's God who's the part of, the nature, part of God that is above nature, there's part of the master of the universe. It's all clear. Once you start implementing Cabala and mysticism, it's a whole different layer. There's a difference between the first bracha of Shemona Esrei you do in Shacharit and the same bracha when you do in Mincha. And it's a whole different world when you come to Mariv. So I think my father wanted to share this with people, that they had the ability to reach. However, his original book on Kabbalah, The Third Imperial Rose, is exactly 180 degrees, complete opposite than the Talmud. There's nothing easy in the book. It's not meant to be easy. It's meant to engage people, meant to access it, but it's a book that you have to spend time learning it. It's not as easy. And because the purpose was a whole different thing. The purpose was to open another layer of Torah learning, of Jewish knowledge, to a whole different audience that can and they have the capabilities to read this like that. And I think that's what he looked for. He was, in a lot of ways, was Kabbalistic in nature. I mean, I can't tell you whether he wore white tallis. He didn't. But he, the way he did Kiddush, the way he cut his bread, the way he said in verses that he told me to say before Tkiyat Shofar, all kind of things that had a list of, the only way to describe them are Kabbalistic meaning. Now, can I find other meaning in them? Absolutely. But I think he got to those ideas from mysticism. I remember when I got married, and we had this conversation. It's supposed to be my father. My father had a medical treatment that day. Why can you do it the next day? I don't know, but with the medical treatment, we're sitting in Shaarei Tzedek, and we're talking, and he's like, okay, so this is what you have to think under the chuppah. And he had the whole list, which, what you have to do in this, what you have to do in that, what is this meaning, what is that meaning? But I asked him, it's all minhagim, right? None of this thing we do on the chuppah that became sanctum, became holy, rounding around the challah, all this stuff is customs. So yeah, but now, after being established as custom, we pour into them whole different meaning. We elevate those customs to a whole different level of grandeur. And it was tremendously important for me. And I think that's the main reason why he did it.
Okay. What was your father, Rav Steinsaltz's approach to Jewish education, and how did that apply, and how did he get involved in Russian Jewry and the education of Russian Jewry?
So, again, as I said, my father's main goal in life, as you see here on the wall, is let my people know. He believed that his Judaism, the way he perceived Judaism, is knowledge. And without knowledge, there's nothing. Jews that only obey will get absolutely nowhere. That even though that he had a great respect to customs and behavior and mitzvah, practical mitzvahs, he really believed that the really key is understanding the word of God and understanding knowledge. And understanding without knowledge, we can't do anything. And by the way, we see it today. We see it everywhere you go. People sometimes follow customs and you argue with them about the custom because it's just not logical. And there's no conversation because they never learned. The rabbi did this, and the rabbis did it, and nobody asking question. And it's becoming very, very remote in not understanding. He believed that maybe it's another way to look at it, is the mitzvah, V'yadat ha'yom v'shivot levavecha ki Hashem hu Elokim. You should take heed, put it in your heart, to have the knowledge of what is God. You have to know God. You have to the human knowledge, human ability, you have to go and spend the time. And I think when he had this amazing story of going into Russia and getting the permit, which is, again, it's miracle after miracle. We till today don't understand what happened there. My father went to Russia in around 87, maybe 86, with a passport with no visa to go into Russia. Literally, he had nothing on his passport, was empty. It was a new passport, was not even nothing. He went in, they let him in Russia, which is crazy as they come. And then from there, after many hours of investigation, interrogation, whatever it is, nobody threatened him, by the way. The Russians didn't know what to do with him, so they sent him to the Italians. And the Italian had an ambassador there, or attaché, who later on became the president of Italy, Andreotti, who took likeness to my father. And he said, I'm going to help you. And he created a meeting with him and forgot the name of the minister, not Khorachov, maybe Khorachov. And they talk about recreating the first Jewish academy in Moscow. Basically, they built a yeshiva and they called it academy and let the Russian pay for it under the Academia of Russian Sciences, which is just the sentence makes no sense. I mean, again, let's repeat it. This is it's a yeshiva in parentheses. We're going to call it Academy for Jewish Studies under the Academy of Sciences, not even philosophy, which is mind-blowing. And when he did that, I think he created a lot of Russian intellects, this is the Russian my father, I think, aimed for. Those who can read they have a continuation of can read Google. Dostoevsky and then understand that he's too short, and maybe they had another 500,000-600,000 pages. This is the intellectual thing. My father thought that if he will approach them and bring knowledge and information to them, create a system there, will be a tremendous help for them to relearn who they are. She was, the Russian Communist Party actually was very efficient of destroying memories. And he thought that will be very, very helpful. And it was. And it was for a while till I think he realized that right now there's a power on the ground. Chabad came in and Chabad took over, and they're doing tremendous work there. And therefore, then he left. But before that, he was very involved in Russian Jewry, and he liked them. She was unique for him to like anything.
Okay. What do you think is your father's, Rav Steinsaltz, most important book, and why? Not your favorite. We'll get to your favorite, but okay. What is the most important?
I think the most important book of my father is the 30 Pale Rows. What he did there to Cabala is really second to none. The ability to basically compile, thousands of books into a very small book, and really give access to people to understand what it's all about is I think, my father, tremendous success. And and the twin brother of that book, which is the Essential Talmud. My father did the same thing to the Talmud. Again, there's always, as generation goes by, you can always think about upgrades and what could I have done better. Maybe pictures there too. But I think these two books, what I call them the twin brothers, are tremendous. His ability to write so clear, and the ability of the editor, Yehuda Hanegbi, may rest in peace, to bring my father's words so clearly. That is, it's for me, it's very clear that is a business card. That's what I usually buy, because we're not the publisher anymore. Koren is the publisher, so I buy from Koren 30-40 copies of each every year and give them away, because that is the key for what we do. Again, I think upgrade can always be done, but I think this is the two books.
And your favorite one, is that different from the most important ones?
My favorite one is Tractate Avodah Zarah. In the Talmud, Tractate Avodah Zarah is just a tremendous book. What they did there, bringing back the censorship, bringing back the stories, not being afraid to add the picture of some idols here and there. My favorite book, Tractate Avodah Zarah in the Talmud. It's a comfortable read. I mean, some of the stuff obviously is hard, but it's a very interesting, especially in our modern world, the view of the Jewish community versus the world around them, and what do you do when the culture around you changes and your premises of idol worship moved from, they no longer worship idols. What am I going to do with this? What do I do with the fact that no longer the local non-Jew wants to kill me, or most of the time he doesn't want to kill me? What do I do with it? The Talmud Avodah Zarah deal with it. And I think they have hilarious stories there. I mean, some of them are just unspeakable, but some of them are just, the way they look at himself with the non-Jewish world, it's different. And I think that part of what my father did there was also understand that we are not separate from the world. Judaism and our faith and our existence is part of the world around. The world is part of the divinity, the part of the spirituality around us. This is what we have to look in best of ways to do so. I mean, I think if it's paraphrasing what Lubavitch Rebbe did, right? What we do now, we do a Zoom in a internet, God forbid, which is what you can see there, but it's really, you can see all evil, and you can do good. And I think that is the message for me for Tractate Avodah Zarah, which is my favorite. book, so to speak.
Did your father engage with non-Jewish personalities, intellectuals? Were there dialogues, and what kind of dialogues were there, or was it, that wasn't part of what he did?
It was definitely part of what he did. He was never engaging it in an active way, but when he was asked, is the very famous, in the year 2001, when they did the 2000-year Millennium Summit in the UN, which my father gave a speech there. There was a meeting between the Jews and the cardinals. And my father was a senior rabbi, even though the chief rabbis of Israel were there. My father was, well, at least the way I read the text, again, I was not there. My father was regarded as the top rabbi. And my father they set my father near Lustiger, which was the Jewish cardinal of France. And my father turned around to him and said, "Can you tell me where does it say in the New Testament that a Jew converted to Christianity doesn't have to put tefillin every day?" I mean, he had a conversation with them, and he believed that the relationship needed to be strong and powerful. And he understood that our allies in these generations are the church and not the Muslims. Present time will prove this again. But he did not push it in the sense of it was not part of his agenda. He sent me when I was very, very young to have a conversation with one of the local archbishops here in Jerusalem. I was involved with him, but again, it was not part of the tremendous agenda of his. It happened to be. He had meeting with, I think, most major religious leaders, including his last meeting before his stroke was with the Pope.
What is your favorite story about your father, whether it's from childhood or after childhood? What's the memory of that?
So I have plenty of them because I also managed. I worked with him since 2005. Stroke was 2016. So I tell you two stories. One is my story. So we're going back. This is literally 7 hours before he's getting the stroke. And we end up playing back from Italy, immediately after meeting with the Pope. And, and we sit together and we fly and it's all nice. And all of a sudden I realized I didn't ask him, what did you speak to with the Pope about? And I turned around and said, Father, I said, yes. So what did you speak with the Pope about? He said, we spoke what two old men talk about all the time. Women and food. So again, it was a joke, clearly. And then he went and elaborated what he talked about. But the fact he had the sense of humor about it. The man just met a major world leader. And that the sense of humor of it, nothing he did seriously, was very important. That he took this idea of tremendous ability to be sarcastic and to be in a sense to laugh at things was very important. But my other childhood memory, which I hold very dear, and I keep saying it, so it's not that unique. It won't be the first time I'm saying it. So as a young man, as a child, and even today, I don't sleep well. I'm sure some doctors can help me. I'm sure. It's okay. So I used to wake up around, let's say, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and my father was just coming back from work. And in the living room, our house is very much like my parents' house. It's much more like a hobbit tunnel. It's it's relatively very, very narrow and very long. In the middle is the living room, and they have this old round IKEA table from the 50s. And my father's sitting there, and he has his historical pipe, which was everywhere. There's a Talmud open and a science fiction book attached to it. I think that is my father. That was it. I mean, it's the ability also to say to people, it's something that I try to teach everybody. Anybody who tells you he doesn't have time, it's clear to me he's lying to you. Everybody has time. There's no such thing as somebody's too busy. He doesn't want to give you the time, but he has time. The father was a tremendously busy human being. He had meetings most likely all day long. Most of the time, that was the schedule. starting early, finishing late, working on his own materials. But he always, if he wanted to meet you, he had time. There was no issue. And I think part of it that he was not arrogant enough. Now, the funniest thing is that his favorite excuse was, when somebody who didn't want to meet, was, I don't have time. So after one of those meetings, I came to him and said, Father, I don't understand. I know you have time. I know the schedule of this week. And you know you have time because clearly it's your schedule. Why do you tell this individual you don't have time? He said, because they don't know. Okay. And I think that is the key part of it.
Tell us a little bit about the Steinsaltz Center, what you're doing, what the future plans are.
Sure. So the Steinsaltz Center right now is located in Jerusalem, in the center of the city, in Keren Hayesod Street. Our main emphasis is to bring my father's works that we did not publish yet, or we did publish in one language, translate them to many other languages, and make them available and accessible to everybody constantly. So the first thing we did, which we did this year, was to launch our app and a web portal that have, again, tremendous amount of information in it, but it will have everything. My father left, according to estimate, we don't have a final number, something close to 15,000 pages of materials was not published yet. And then more or less between 8,000 to 9,000 hours of audio and 3,000 to 4,000 hours of video, that all of them can be edited, translated, worked, create materials with it. I think we have enough books to publish, let's say, for the next 100 years, more or less. So that'll be a tremendous work we're doing the next 10 years. A lot of it will be categorizing it, analyzing the text, and uploading it online, because a lot of the stuff it's nice, but it's not book worthy. Me personally, I have promised my father that I will finish his desire to finish the Jewish canon in both English and Hebrew. From our perspective, the Jewish canon is very clear. There's Tanakh, there's Mishnah, there's Talmud, there's Rambam, and there's Tanya, just to make sure the Lubavitchers are into. And so we finished this in Hebrew. And the English, we finished the Tanakh, we finished the Talmud. The Tanya is about to finish in literally less than 6 weeks. And now we start working on 2 major projects of doing both the Mishnah and Rambam in English, which I estimate they'll be ready for the public as a complete set. And we want to have part of them before in the next 4.5 years.
Okay. This week, actually yesterday, I was at a class, a shiur given by a local Rav, and he told the following story. He said that in 2014, when the IDF was involved in Lebanon, he attended a wedding, and they asked him to speak under the chuppah. And next to him was your father, Rav Steinsaltz. So he turned to your father and he said, "For the Rav, you should be speaking, And your father said, "No, you say whatever needs to be said under the chuppah." And the Rav said that as he started to speak, your father actually started to correct him on a few things, but okay. But he said one of the things that he spoke about, as he was talking about the army and the soldiers, he was talking about, that there should be an hatzlacha. And your father interrupted him and said, no, not hatzlacha. It has to be a nitzachon. And he said it in English. There has to be a victory, not a hatzlacha. So I guess the question is, and I know this is a hard question, how would your father, how would Rav Steinsaltz view the events of today? From what perspective, from what lens do you think he would view what we're going through today here in Israel?
So it's clearly a very heavy question. And I'm not my father, so I can only imagine. So my father will look at the thing in 3 different ways. First way is he'll be concerned about his own grandkids. My father has now 6 grandkids who are serving in the army in a variety of locations. as you said, you wish him victory as much as we can. And then that would be one perspective, it's a personal perspective, it's personal revering. And the second one will be concerned about his students. We, as we speak, momentarily we have 130 something students, a variety of ages, from our Hesed Yeshiva, which was called in completely, to people who are teachers already or staff at the center itself who are there. But that's still on a personal level. I think my father will have two parts to his view. One, he will be in a tremendous pain. The father is a lover of the Jewish people. He cared about it. He cared about people. In the tremendous evilness that we saw, the pain, the suffering, the sorrows that we were witnessing, that will be something that will be on his heart and soul. Two, as much as my father loved people, also he loved humanity. But he cared more about our humanity, cared more about our people. And he would be, as he told this rabbi, which I don't know his name, some small victory we had in Lebanon, or we want to have in Lebanon in 2014. The tremendous victory that we need to have now should be a victory that not just to be a victory that we can say, we showed them. No, it'll be a victory in such level that the ancient prophecy of Azinu, Aninu goyim amo, dam avod av yiko, nakam yoshev letzoro, v'chiper admos amoy. The key word of that verse in Azinu, I think it's verse 43, is Arninu. When the nations of the world will realize that our victory is not for us only, it's for purifying and clearing the world, that we know we won. That is when you know also that God is with us, and that's when you know where we are victorious. I think that's what he will say. Of course, he will do it in a much more elegant and elaborate way than me, but I think that's what he will say. He cared, but he also wanted people not to be afraid. We want people to know that victory is needed. We are allowed to say these words. We need a clear and decisive victory.
Well, I guess we'll leave on that note, and that tefillah and the zchut of your father and the learning and the Torah, and as you mentioned, learning and tefillah and tzedakah and chesed should hopefully protect everybody and bring that victory. And of Even-Israel, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, the Torah, and of course the personal memories. We appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Sure, my pleasure.